Hi, everyone, and welcome to this B2 Lead conversation. Today we have another incredible guest, Paola Ligabue. This time, Paola is from my own country. She's Italian and she is an international co president of the European Women Management Development and International Network. Paola, it is such a pleasure and honor to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It is a pleasure. It is a pleasure. And I so look forward to learning more about your story and the lessons that you can share with us about your story. And let me ask you a question. The first question: who is Paola Ligabue?
That's a very good and complicated question. Well, I feel that many women, I'm a lot of women. I'm from Reggio Emilia, which is a small city in the north of Italy, as you know, and I've always been keen to get out of my city. I wanted to learn languages and travel, and I started when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And then I had to face a rather complicated life because my father didn't allow me to travel at all. But I learned languages anyway. And then I set up a company, and then I have 3 daughters. I'm fighting for the women's rights, of course, because that's a subject that really interests me, because my mother started to work when she was 11 years old, and she's been working all the time, and I learned from her many values.
Wow. And usually the way we are brought up and the people who are in our life when we are kids really are role models for us and teach us so much. So I know you have a very interesting story to share, and it starts from what you have just told us. If you look back from where you are now, and you haven't told us much yet, but if you look back into your life, have you and you see where you are today, is where you have always wanted to end up, or life took you there, events took you there? I don't know, maybe you wanted to be an astronaut. No, not.
Not at all.
So how did it happen that you end up to where you are today?
Yes. Well, I think I was very determined, because I really wanted to work with languages and with people and with travels, as I said before. So I succeeded, even though I had, as I told you, my father was not very flexible, let's say. And he was rather sexist and macho, and he would have liked me to stay at home and crocheting or cooking all the time, which actually I learned how to crochet and also to cook, but that was not my career, of course. And I started working with my family business, which was a goldsmith, a jewelry shop. For 5 years I've been working with them, and then unluckily and luckily at the same time we had a burglary, and my father decided to close the shop, and that was the opportunity I had to go my way. And I started working as an interpreter for several companies. I never wanted to be employee, and so I started like this, and then I set up a company in 1979, which seems ages ago. And
Congratulations.
when I went up to, until to 2015, and I had more than 10 employees, and I've been doing really what I really wanted to do. So I'm very happy to say that. It was a fight, and my sister just recently told me that I was very brave, because of course she knew our father too, and she couldn't imagine that I could succeed to do what I wanted to do.
That is incredible. Also, because as you mentioned, and also when we spoke before this interview, you were describing how your father was very traditional in the sense that he was in seeing women as being married at home and cooking, taking care of the family, where instinct, character, desire, and attitude was completely different. And you, in fact, you wanted to have your own career. And you said that you have been very determined to the point that at first you work in a family business, but then an opportunity really happened and it gave you a chance to start your own business, right?
Yeah.
What would you say made a difference for you there? So, what, and your sister said you were very brave. So, if you look back at that event when you decided to start your own business and build your own career as a woman, Italian woman, born in a traditional family, um, what qualities, what resources would you say you needed to tap into to really make it? So, you said you were determined, your sister said you were brave. What would you say made a difference for you then as a
Yes.
woman?
Well, I think it depends also on yourself, of course, on your qualities or characteristics. I've been always very, very much interested in people. I mean, when I
Mm,
talk to customers or whatever, collaborators, people I work with, they really feel I'm interested in them. And the companies, for example, they understood that from the very beginning. And I was, let's say, eased by the fact that by that time, we are talking about the early 80s,
mhm, mhm,
many women were involved in languages. I mean, interpreters used to be only women. And there is a reason why, because the men that knew languages could access much more interesting careers, because companies were investing on them and sending them abroad and letting them becoming, for example, sales manager or whatever. But women who knew languages, as employees, they could only be a secretary. And that was a point that led many, many women learning languages to start their own businesses as interpreters or translators or whatever. So by that time, this was the main stream of this job.
mhm,
Then it became quite different when I started to do recruiting, because I started some years later to do that. And I was very young. And the people involved, consultants involved in recruiting, were men and
mhm.
older than me. So it took me some time to be considered reliable and credible, but then I succeeded also that in that case, because people knew that I was interested in finding the right person for the right company.
So you said that you were what made a difference for you was your interest in people, right? And then you said that in fact you also started a career in recruiting, so you do need to have an interest in people. And then you said the challenge therefore was that I was too young, and so I was not immediately seen as reliable or credible. So how did you overcome those challenges? First, being a woman that wants to be in business in a period of time, especially maybe in Italy, where it was particularly new and more not so usual.
Yeah.
And then your family, and then you are young. And so, how did you overcome those challenges? What are the skills? Did you have skills that maybe you never thought about it, but you did have some skills that you put in place there and you used to do this? So, what would you say if you look back now?
Uh,
What made a difference?
Yes, what I was acknowledged always was to be very friendly and open, and making connections all the time. Because if somebody talks to me about one thing, I keep it in my
Mm,
brain, in my mind, and then later, also 10 years later, it can be.
mm,
If somebody asks me for something that I can do, I remember all the people that I met many, many
mm,
years back. So
mm.
this is also important, because when they, for example, a company asks me for a certain candidate or a certain employee, I immediately remember at least one or two that I met don't know when, and I can contact them immediately. So this spares time also, of course,
Yeah, yeah,
and also it's a very good point for the companies.
yeah. And also, what I also understand is that you were able to be generous and to be sharing. And the reason I point this out is because today I think that we women, we need to learn to be generous and open and share a little bit more sometimes than what we do. We are sometimes we might be too concerned about opening up and sharing and be generous. What would you say to that?
Yes, yes, generosity is surely one of my points, and I try to help as many women as possible, even though some don't want to be helped. But anyway,
Have you
this is
have this
another point.
experience?
Yes.
Yes, you have. Have you met women that don't want to be helped?
Yes, well, sometimes I get mad about some candidates. They decide to give up their career just to stay at home and take care of children or elderly people, and their husbands. They go on with their own lives and they do their jobs, and sometimes I really ask them, what about your husband? Wouldn't he stay at home for taking care of the children instead of you, and you go on with your career? And they say, "Oh no, he's earning more than me," and that's another point against the gender pay gap, and that's another thing that I can't understand. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
these are the cases, for example, when I try to help people and then it's not
yeah,
possible to do that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yes, I try to help my peers, my collaborators, my friends, my colleagues, my members, as far as
yeah,
EWMD is concerned,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
that's it.
And I think that this capacity to really be generous and wanting to help, it is a skill. If somebody doesn't have it as an attitude, it is something that we do need to learn how to support each other. So that's beautiful, and it seems like you have done it quite naturally. And I know you are such an energetic person that it's wonderful to be around you, Paola. So if we look back again from where you are today, back at your life, what would you say were the key challenges that you had to overcome in order to move forward in your career, apart from what you have just shared with us? What would you say were the key challenges?
Well, the key challenge for me was my family, because, of course, if you don't have the support of your family, you feel a little bit lost. And as I said, my father was not really helpful in this case. Luckily, I had my mother who supported me anyway, anytime, and my sister, of course. So it was a family of women,
Yeah.
and luckily, yes, my mother was strong enough, because even though she was very much in love with my father, the job that she had started was her job, but not my father's, and he came later. So I think that knowing him, he's always been a little bit angry for owing something to my mother, to a woman.
So sorry, sorry to intersect you there. The family business or the jewelry business was
Was
started from
my
your.
mother's. Yes,
Oh, okay, that's
yes,
interesting.
yes.
Beautiful,
And
beautiful.
so I think that he was a little bit yes, depressed, and yes,
Mm,
because of
mm,
that. But
mm,
then in the end, okay, it was funny, because when he was talking to some friends or some people he knew, he was praising me. He was telling, she's very bright, she started a company of her own. And with me, he was always trying to get me lower than what I
mm.
was doing, than what I was. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it must
that's
have been
his
quite difficult.
generation. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So what advice, what suggestion would you give to young women today that maybe might not have the support of their families and they want to move on with their life, and maybe do start a company or do something that their family is not happy with, what would you suggest them
Yes. Well,
to do?
first of all, every time I go and I have an audience with the majority of men, I always underline this fact that they should support their daughters, because daughters are very much, let's say, influenced by their father's opinion, and they should support them in any way. If the girls don't have this support, they should anyway try to do as much as they can to achieve their goals, because it cannot be that you are, let's say, break if you don't if you want to go on, and your father in particular, but it can also be the mother, uh, they don't want to support you, but they have to go on anyway, because then after a while they understand that they don't need to be, let's say, confirmed or approved by their family, if they succeed in what they are doing, if they are convinced in what they are doing.
Mm. That's very powerful. Thank you, Paula, for sharing this. And in your path, in your career, did you have mentors and role models that helped you somehow, or was something that was not present in your life? We are hearing from your story that your father, that might have been a role model for some things, he was actually a roadblocks for you. So did you have other people that influenced you in a positive way
Yes, my
about your
mother for
career?
sure. Yes, my mother for
Mm,
sure. And
mm,
she was really somebody I could learn from, even though she had just finished primary school when she was elementary school when she started to work. But she was so curious, and was constantly reading and learning on her own. And she was very wise. And people say I look like her very much in our characters. We are alike. And then, secondly, a friend of mine, a good school mate, uh, who was involved in advertising, and he was in touch with a lot of companies. And when I started my own business, he was
mm,
introducing me to all of his customers.
mm,
And
mm,
that's why I started, because yes, I had a couple of customers, but all the others, he introduced me to them. So I can thank him very much. His name is Paolo, and
mm.
we are still friends, and we see each other from time to time, also with the other schoolmates. But he
Yeah.
was helping me in that case.
And it is so beautiful to hear that, because what we want to learn to do more and more, even today, and even in corporations and maybe in bigger corporation, is to collaborate so that men, women, we can together really grow. And the fact
Yes,
that you are mentioning this Paolo, that actually was instrumental for you because you
yes.
wanted to start a company, your own business, and he opened the doors for you at the beginning. That's exactly all we need. And for Paolo to do that, I guess that he needed to be very open minded and very generous as well.
Yes, yes, absolutely. He was, and he is. But we are still in touch, and we help each other still, because
Mhm.
he's in the Association of Alzheimer. I don't know the name exactly, how is it spelled in English, but he was looking for somebody to help him with the project for hairdressers to go to the house of these patients, of these people ill.
Yeah, yeah,
And I introduced him to CNA, and they started this project. So I'm
yeah.
very happy
That's
that
that's beautiful.
our relationship is going on. Yeah,
So you are very fortunate to have such a relationship in your life. And
yeah,
if you had to the opportunity to speak with other male colleagues, maybe that you have encountered throughout your career, or people you know today that are male leaders, men in organization, what would you invite them to do differently so that they could support the advancement of women in leadership in a different way, in a new way. Is there anything you would invite them to do differently, or stop doing, or start doing that they are not doing?
Well, they have to rely on their female colleagues, and they have to push them forward to get a career of their own. Also, because I don't know if you have heard about that, but usually men live longer when they have female bosses. I don't know if
Really?
I
No, I
read
haven't
it
heard.
somewhere, and when I talked about this in a meeting I had, and there was the majority of men. They were all just looking at me as if I was mad, and they said, "Well, what is she talking about?" But that's true. Not only bosses, but if you work in an environment with mostly women, you are really living longer. So I believe that because we have a different way to approach problems, to approach things, and if we are given the chance to, let's say, decide, well,
Mm,
this is. Then they will find out how it is having
mm,
us as bosses or colleagues or
mm.
opinion leaders.
So from what you're saying, we could say that we invite them to be actually a little bit more curious and interested in how their female colleagues actually are, and trying to be um, really more attentive, and maybe get to learn their
Yes,
colleagues a little bit
yes.
more. Yeah.
And for example, the fact that the meetings are usually after 6 o'clock in the afternoon, this should be stopped. I know that in many companies, men employees started to ask for a more human timing for the meetings, just to help their female colleagues. That as long as there is not the parity in the tasks in the family, women are still involved with the family care, and so they need help from this point of view also.
Yeah, very beautiful, very very good point you are making. Actually, this is, and sometimes we don't think about it,
Yeah.
especially now that we work remote and time is,
Yes. Yes.
it somehow doesn't exist. It seems like. And what would you invite women to do differently? Because I think we do need to change both ways, right? So, what would you recommend us women to start doing, stop doing, do different?
They should stop refusing challenging tasks or positions, roles.
Mm,
They have to be sure that they can succeed in what they do, because they're facing that every day in their normal life, in family or whatever. And they should be more convinced of themselves, because
mm,
we really have a lot of power, a lot of uh, I don't know how to say it, but we really have the same qualities that men do, work wise, and maybe something more, if I can if I can say that. But we are not sure that of what we can do, and
mm.
we have to be more empowered from that point of view.
When
More
you
power.
say we are not sure of what we do, you mean that we do not realize, and
Yes,
we don't have the confidence of
yes,
believing in what we can do, right?
yes, yes.
So, in your experience, you have a long experience at work. If you look at your own experience, ha- have you had moments when you really needed to trust in yourself, have confidence in yourself beyond what you were used to, and you did it, and you took that job that maybe you wouldn't have, or that client in your case, because you are an entrepreneur. So can you share with us a moment in your experience when you actually were able to do this, that you are inviting us to
Yes.
consider?
Well, the fact that I was proposed to be elected as international co-president of EWMD, for example, because it was not my comfort zone, and in the past, not many Italian women were asked to do that because of the language, of course, because mainly this is the main obstacle, but also because they were not sure of themselves enough to approach an international environment. So
Mm,
it was a challenge,
mm,
and well, more than this was the international marketing manager that I was before becoming the international co-president, because it was the first time I could be in a team and an international team and decide for mm, so many women that were relying on me.
yeah.
But yes, always very optimistic. I
Mm,
always see half full glass and not half empty. So this
mm,
helped me all my life, because even in the darkest periods of my life, as you know, I lost my husband 10 years ago and my mother a few months later. But I've always thought that something good would come the next day. And
mm,
so this is I think the thing that helped me most to survive,
mm,
to go
mm,
on and do my
mm.
things.
Which is such a beautiful, beautiful characteristic and attitude you have. If you had to teach me to be optimistic, if you had to teach somebody to be optimistic, what would you invite me to do? What can I do to become more optimistic? Because there are people that maybe they are not optimistic by nature, or they are more inclined to see the half empty glass. So what would you recommend us to do to be more optimistic?
I don't really know, because this, I think this comes from yourself, from your inside inside you, and I don't know what to advise. The thing that is absolutely not repairable or not mendable is death. So apart from that, I think that every problem can be resolved, and we can find a way out in every situation.
So perhaps to begin to be optimistic, we can start thinking when we are faced with challenges, we can start thinking of you and think, well, Paola says that there is always a way out. So let's look for it.
Yes,
That could,
maybe, yes.
that could be a way that we can start expanding our capacity for optimism.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paola. That's wonderful. One last question I have. You have daughters, right?
yeah.
Um, if you again look back at your incredible life and all you have achieved and what you are still achieving, what would be the one piece of advice that today you would give them so that they could live their best life and have a fulfilling career? What would be that one advice that you would give them?
It's not easy because they are very different, and they practically belong to three different generations, because I have one which is 49, one is 34, and the youngest one is 27. And they
Mm,
have really developed their own careers in different ways. They The fact that I was always very busy with with my job, with my company, I tried to stay at home on weekends to be with them, and but otherwise during the week they were with someone else, my mother, a babysitter, an au pair girl, or whatever. And um, I find that they grew well. I mean, they are
yes.
very mm, independent, and they look at job in a constructive way. I mean,
Mm, mm,
they never thought that having a job like a normal, not normal, but employee would be the only chance they had. So two of them are putting up, well, one put up her own company, and the other one is going to go for that way. So my advice, I think that I was their role model practically, because they were talking about me with their friends. They were just looking at me, and despite the fact that I was not with them as much as they wanted me to, they appreciated that I was so busy, let's say. And so I think that the advice that I always gave to them is, do what you like, do what you prefer to do, and don't think about money. I mean, this is one point, because if you want to do something that doesn't give you money straight away, you can be, yes, a little bit demotivated, but they never thought about that. They decided, they went on their own way. So they really did what they liked, and this is, in my opinion, the best thing that they could choose for their career, their life.
Wonderful. So do what you like, and don't think about money or status, but just be true to yourself and do what you actually like. Would you give a different advice if you had the son?
No, I think no. I have a grandson who is 21 years old, and now is in Erasmus in Lisbon. And I think that he grew with the same principles as my daughters, because my eldest daughter was very, very brave and very good at growing him in a certain way. And I will have another grandson in February.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. And I think I will teach him the same way I did with my daughters. I don't think there must be a difference between male and female. So I think it will be the same exactly.
Paola, one last question. Is there anything else you would like to share? A lesson that you have learned and that I have not asked about, that you would like to share before we finish?
Yes, the only episode event that really made me mad about being a woman, because one of my customers, the first time I approached him, he didn't want to meet me without a man. I mean, he knew that I had a sort of partner who was supporting me with recruiting. And the first time I asked him to meet me with this customer, he said, okay, but then you take with you Luca, who was my partner at that time, and he didn't want to talk to me. But then it was an episode, and I was so angry with that in the first period. But then we became friends, and he's still supporting me in many other activities, and so it's all gone. But this was the only time I had this experience, and I still remember it. I still remember how his dress, his clothes, when he was telling me that, because I was there, and I said, okay, you come back when Luca is available. And I said, okay.
Well, that was for sure a very intense experience, because it was basically telling that he was not trusting you to be alone in this business meeting, right? Yeah. So what would you, after you had this experience and you experienced that anger, what would you invite women, young women that might be in a similar situation today? Because I'm afraid
they don't have to give up. They simply have to try again, and then try to be to get in good terms with these people, and make them understand that women can be also better than men sometimes. So why not?
So not take it personal.
No, not take it personal. I took it personally. I must say. But you shouldn't with customers, yes. And
Yeah,
so it was my mistake in the beginning because I didn't call him anymore for many months.
yeah.
And
And so,
so,
and Paola, what would you tell the then young Luca?
my partner,
And no, no,
no, the customer,
the
oh,
customer.
the
Sorry.
customer, I don't know. He's
What could
well,
have you done differently?
no, I don't think I could have done it differently because yes, uh, I would do the same. I mean, so
You would do this, and
yes, and
what?
I would get angry, but maybe I would have called him earlier than what I did. So this is yeah.
Right, right, right. And if you could, and you could, if you could invite your customer, the one that reacted in that way, to behave differently or to do something differently, what would you tell him today?
Well, it changed over the years, and it was also a matter of yes, of time. There were there were times where women were not absolutely taken into consideration. So
Mm.
with time, he improved. So
So, would it be fair to say that women, we don't take it personally when this situation happens, but perhaps being able to keep going, keep building the relationship, and speak
yes,
up and
yes.
be able
Instead
to
of getting
say,
angry, yes,
yeah,
absolutely, yes, we should.
wonderful, wonderful. Paola, has been amazing having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
How
Barbara.
can how can people reach you if they want to connect with you? What's the best way to connect with you? Is on
Well,
LinkedIn?
my website is Paola Ligabue Consulting.eu, like Europe.
Hmm.
And here, there they have all my contacts, telephone and email. If anybody wants to get in touch, I will
And
be pleased.
yeah, and of course also on LinkedIn, right? Given that we
Yes, of
are
course, on LinkedIn. Yes, yes,
excellent,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
excellent. So thank you again very much for being here, Paola, and thank you everybody for listening to this very very beautiful story.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Paola. Bye.
Bye.